I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces all day through. In that small cafe, the park, across the way, the children's carousel, the maple tree, the wishing well. I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's light and gay. I'll always think of you that way. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you. On March 20th, 1960, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke at the Battle Creek First United Methodist Church. It was the only time Dr. King visited Battle Creek, and though he visited other communities in the area, this was the only sermon he gave in Southwest Michigan. This is the story of how that historic event took place. It began when Reverend David Evans Jr., the pastor of the First United Methodist Church, was making plans for a series of Lenten programs to be held over 5 Sunday evenings around the Easter holiday in 1960. Reverend Evans was looking for some dynamic speakers to fill out his Lenten series. Reverend Evans said about his time in Battle Creek, "One of the programs I recall with satisfaction was the Sunday evening Lenten series that were held from 1960 through 1966, featuring religious leaders from the area of the United Methodism and other Protestant denominations. The 5 Sunday evenings were sort of celebrity series." Reverend Evans went on to say about the program held in 1960, "But the greatest service of all was the night Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. preached. We were very fortunate to be able to secure his appearance through the good offices of my friend Dr. Jesse McNeil, who was then a leader in the Wolverine Baptist Association of Black Baptist churches in Detroit. Dr. McNeil had been corresponding with Dr. King, and it was through him that Dr. Evans was able to make the invitation to speak in Battle Creek. By that fall of 1959, when the plans were being made for the 1960 Lenten series, Dr. King had already achieved national and international attention." Dr. King was born in January 19, 1929, and came from a middle-class family, steeped in the tradition of Southern black ministry. Both his father and maternal grandfather were Baptist ministers. His parents were college-educated, and King's father had succeeded his father-in-law as pastor of the prestigious Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. Young Martin received a solid education and grew up in a loving extended family. In 1944, at age 15, Dr. King entered Morehouse College in Atlanta under a special wartime program intended to boost enrollment by admitting promising high school students like Dr. King. Before beginning college, however, King spent the summer on a tobacco farm in Connecticut. It was his first extended stay away from home and his first substantial experience of race relations outside of the segregated South. He was shocked by how peacefully the races mixed in the North. He said, "Negroes and whites go to the same church," he noted in a letter to his parents. "I never thought that a person of my race could eat just anywhere." That summer's experience in the North only deepened King's growing hatred of racial segregation. King graduated from Morehouse College in 1948, then attended Crozer Theological Seminary in Chester, Pennsylvania, where he became acquainted with Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence. He earned a Bachelor of Divinity degree in 1951. Renowned for his oratorical skills, King was elected president of Crozer's student body, which was composed almost exclusively of white students. From Crozer, King went to Boston University, where, in seeking a firm foundation for his own theological and ethical inclinations, he studied man's relationship to God and received a doctorate in 1955. Dr. King became pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. He had been there slightly more than a year when the city's small group of civil rights advocates decided to contest racial segregation on that city's public bus system, following the incident on December 1st, 1955, in which Rosa Parks, an African-American woman, had refused to surrender her bus seat to a white passenger and as a consequence was arrested for violating the city's segregation law. Activists formed the Montgomery Improvement Association to boycott the transit system and chose King as their leader. He had the advantage of being a young, well-trained man who was too new in town to have made enemies. He was generally respected, and it was thought that his family connections and professional standing would enable him to find another pastorate should the boycott fail. But the boycott was successful. Recognizing the need for a mass civil rights movement to capitalize on the successful Montgomery action, King set about organizing the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which gave him a base of operations through the South, as well as a national platform from which to speak. King lectured in all parts of the country and discussed race-related issues with religious and civil rights leaders at home and abroad. In 1960, Dr. King and his family moved to his native city of Atlanta, where he became co-pastor with his father of the Ebenezer Baptist Church. At this post, he devoted most of his time to the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and the Civil Rights Movement, declaring that the psychological movement has come when a concentrated drive against injustice can bring great, tangible gains. It was at this time that Dr. King was invited to Battle Creek to speak at the church. Reverend Evans was including 4 other prominent religious leaders to speak at the 7:30 p.m. 1960 Lenten series. The group would include, on March 6th, Dr. Dwight Loader, president of the Garrett Biblical Institution from Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois. On March 13th, Dr. Roy Pearson, the dean of Andover Newton Theological School in Newton Center, Massachusetts. Dr. King would speak on March 20th. On March 27th, Dr. Robert D. Swanson, president of Alma College from Alma, Michigan, and on the final program was held on April 3rd with Dr. Paul Morrison, pastor of the Central Methodist Church in Lansing, Michigan. Dr. Jesse McNeil, whom Reverend Evans was making the arrangements for the visit, was doubtful that Dr. King would be able to visit Battle Creek because of his busy schedule. But Dr. King was scheduled to speak in Detroit at that same time, so it worked out that he could be at Battle Creek's First Methodist Church. Reverend Evans worked with a group of local black religious leaders in the community to make sure that Dr. King's visit would transpire smoothly. Reverend Paul Bigby of the Second Baptist Church was instrumental in working on the logistics of the event to make sure Dr. King's program would be available to everyone in the community. Reverend Bigby warned that Dr. King's visit would pack the church to overflowing, so chairs were set up in the basement community room, along with loudspeakers being placed there, and also in the chapel, so everyone would be able to hear. Reverend Evans saved the correspondence from the 1960s Lenten service and gave it to my mother, local historian Frances Thornton, to add to her extensive archives of Battle Creek history. Among the documents are 7 letters attributed to Dr. King, even though some of them state there that they are not actually signed by him. By this time, he was a very busy man and had a clerical staff that wrote some of his correspondence. Mostly the letters are just reaffirming schedules, but they are still historic treasures. At that time, racial tensions were running high in many places in the country. Because of fears of people attending the program might cause trouble, Reverend Evans asked that some of his friends from the Battle Creek Police Department to attend the evening service in plain clothes, just in case they were needed. Arrangements were made to have extra usher staff on hand to assist with the crowds, along with special instructions of what to do if there were any emergencies. Reverend Evans said, "Other advice was for us to be ready early. We should be in readiness to admit the public by 3:30 p.m. By 6 p.m. the church began to fill up, and by 7:30 there were over 1,100 persons crowded into the church. Every nook and cranny was occupied, with some people in the basement listening to the PA system." He went on to say, "I was very impressed and moved by the hushed expectancy of those patiently waiting people." So on March 20th, 1960, the 31-year-old Dr. King spoke twice at events in Detroit before driving to Battle Creek to give the evening Lenten series sermon on an imagined letter from the Apostle Paul to the American Christians. Joining Dr. King on the podium were the church's associate pastor, Reverend Sidney A. Short, who gave the opening prayer, and the Reverend Paul Bigby of the Second Baptist Church, who read the Bible scripture passage. Dr. King began by saying, "I bring you greetings from the Southland, a section of the country now in transition, as we struggle on for the dreams and ideals of democracy and our Christian faith. The hour is late, and the clock of destiny is ticking out, and the survival of the nation is involved. Civil rights are not something to be kicked around," stated King. He continued, "The Supreme Court's decision to outlaw segregation has been widely accepted as providing moral progress. But some of us have not accepted it and are fighting to thwart it. They have their organizations to preserve white supremacy." Dr. King said, "We must keep the struggle at a high level. The Negro people have suffered for so long, the last to be hired and the first to be fired, bombing, beating, and lynchings. But we must not succumb to temptation and must never sink so low as to hate anyone." Commenting on social protests being held at the time, Dr. King said, "Our concern is to never use second-class methods in winning first-class citizenship. Even a boycott is only a means to an end, and the end is a new society, an achievement of real, eternal brotherhood." Dr. King included a prophetic statement in regards to his own life, with his involvement in the civil rights movement and his death to come a few years later. He said, "We must admit that standing against the forces of evil, we will be abused and scorned. It may mean going to jail, but we will go to jail with a smile. Some will face physical death before the struggle is won, but it is the price that some must pay. Dr. King concluded by saying, "I am still convinced that love is the most durable power. He who hates does not know God. It is only through love that the problems of the world can be solved." Reverend Evans wrote, "The service was triumphant, a moving experience. Dr. King's eloquence and magnetism were powerful. He swept us along with his letter to the present-day Christians. He was at his eloquent best." The offering collected that night was given to the Southern Christian Leadership Conference headed by Dr. King. Reverend Evans remembered, "The offering was a unique experience. Our advisors had told us to allow for more than normal amount of time because of a custom of making change as the plates were passed. Fortunately, I had talked the problem over with the ushers and organists, so he was prepared with a long offertory, and he needed it." Dr. King, along with Reverend Evans, Reverend Bigby, and Reverend Short, greeted people after the service at the altar rail. Reverend Evans said, "It was another moving experience to see the love and admiration as well as hope in the congregation's greetings as each one passed him by. Many parishioners felt the amazing power of his visit." Choir member Joe Shills said, "I was a member of a large choir that sang at the service. For weeks we practiced a very lovely version of 'Day is Dying in the West' to use as our anthem. But it was with excitement that we sang to a church filled to the rafters and beyond with an interracial crowd of people from all around the area." She continued, "He was such a dynamic speaker, and you could almost feel the power radiating from him." Nancy Davis, a 14-year-old junior high school student at the time, spoke about Dr. King's visit. "People were really dressed up, like the women wore hats and gloves, and I was really impressed by that," Davis said. "A lady passed out, she was so overcome. She was in the back of the church, and I was in the balcony, but I could see everything that was happening from the balcony. I remember how powerful his voice and message were that night. He was amazing. After he spoke, he took time to shake hands with everyone and to talk to everyone who wanted to talk to him. He acted like he had all the time in the world to speak to people, and I was very impressed by that. My father, Junior Thornton, was an usher that night. He often told me how amazingly powerful Dr. King's voice was as it filled the sanctuary. He said that King's voice was incredibly powerful. He said that the words and the way Dr. King spoke gave Dad the impression that Dr. King must have stood over 6 feet tall. Dad was so surprised when he went to shake Dr. King's hands at the altar rail after the service. He said, even though Dr. King stood on a step higher than I was eye level with him. His powerful voice and equally powerful words made him sound like a giant. I'll never forget it. Dr. King took time to autograph some church bulletins for attendees. Relieved that there were no major problems, Reverend Evans said, "We had established procedures for emergencies, which it turned out that we did need, because 2 women had to be taken out because of a heart problem. They had fainted, but they were quietly taken out and sent to the hospital. Happily, both recovered. But other than that, the service was peaceful." Dr. King and Reverend Bigby ate a light dinner at the church parsonage on Orchard Avenue with the Evans family before going to the airport in Detroit for his return to Atlanta, Georgia. This photo of that dinner shows the Evans children sitting at a fold-up card table in the parsonage living room. Catherine Evans, Reverend Evans' wife, remembered that special dinner. "My 3 children were able to meet him and have fond memories of his interest in hearing about school and their many activities. He left an indelible impact on all of my family as he spoke about his sorrow that he could not take his youngest daughter, Yolanda, to an amusement park to go on one of the rides she had seen advertised because of segregation policies. A letter from Dr. King's secretary regarding the dinner with the Evans family stated, Dr. King thoroughly enjoyed his visit to Battle Creek and mentioned the very rich fellowship that he had with you and your family. After the March 1960 visit to Battle Creek, Dr. continued to strive for equal rights. Dr. King went on to earn the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. Another Battle Creek connection with Dr. King was when Sister Mary Charlene Curl, a member of the Sisters of Mercy, joined Dr. King at protest marches in Selma, Alabama in 1965. She became the administrator of Lila Hospital later in that year. The Voting Rights Act was passed by Congress and signed by the President in 1965. King prophetically told a crowd at the Mason Temple Church in Memphis on April 3, 1968, I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. Dr. King was assassinated April 4, 1968. In 2002, the Battle Creek First United Methodist Church held a special service commemorating Dr. King's visit. Reverend Sidney Short and Catherine Evans shared their memories from the 1960 service. A plaque was placed on the podium commemorating Dr. King's visit to the church. Services have been held celebrating the anniversaries of Dr. King's visit, and the church's podium that Dr. King spoke from has been shared in many services throughout the community, as shown at this Martin Luther King Jr. Day program held at a local hospital. The impact of Dr. King's visit to Battle Creek cannot be ignored. At a time when questions of civil rights and segregation rocked the country, his visit to our community contributed to our connection with current events and feelings that reverberated across America. Those important beliefs continue to be questioned and must be dealt with. As Dr. King said, hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Let's continue to follow Dr. King's dream and make a better community, a better country, and a better world.
Access Vision, your voice, your community.